Okay, so what's the common thread here? We're seeing critical mineral deals in Central Asia, really serious allegations about Sudan, and then U.S. military strikes in the Caribbean. What connects all this?
It's really the sheer speed and intensity of global politics right now. I
Mhm.
mean, the source material we're looking at today, it just paints this picture of a world where resource competition is, well, it's dictating everything,
Everything.
pretty much,
Yep.
from these massive billion-dollar investment deals, trying to lock down supply chains, right down to proxy wars that seem to be fueled by things like gold and even gum arabic. And then, yeah, direct military action to protect interests.
Right. So we're here to try and connect those dots for you, make this pretty complex picture make a bit more sense. Our mission in this deep dive is really to synthesize this incredibly active landscape.
Yeah, focusing on that renewed U.S. engagement. Definitely the accountability issues in these conflicts, which are frankly quite severe.
And that kind of surprising dual nature of foreign policy we're seeing.
Okay, let's unpack it. We're starting at the top, really.
Hmm.
High-level global economic maneuvering, the C5+1 meeting, and seeing just how fast that map of influence is being redrawn.
Let's kick off there then. Central Asia. President Trump recently hosted the leaders of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, the 5 landlocked stands, the C5+1 format.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this region, historically, you kind of think of it through the lens of Russian and Chinese influence, right? So why this massive renewed focus from Washington now?
It boils down to resource strategy, pure and simple. The sources are calling it the new great game, and the prize is supply chain resilience.
Resilience for critical minerals.
Exactly, critical minerals. The president called Central Asia an extremely wealthy region, and the U.S. goal seems pretty unambiguous. It's diversification, getting away from supply lines dominated by Moscow and Beijing.
And when you actually look at the geology, you get why it's so attractive. I mean, we're talking vast, mostly untapped mineral wealth.
Huge potential.
Uranium, copper, gold, and the really crucial ones now, rare earths. I mean, if the world's moving to EVs and advanced tech, this is the stuff you absolutely need.
It's the foundation for it. And the diplomatic side confirms just how high the stakes are. The Uzbek president, Mirziyoyev, gave this, well, pretty extraordinary compliment to President Trump.
What was it?
He apparently said, in Uzbekistan, we call you the president of the world. Now, that level of praise, it signals a potentially massive political shift, doesn't it? A real willingness to pivot towards the U.S.
And that sentiment wasn't just talk. It translated into a solid economic agreement. The administration announced what they called an incredible trade and economic deal with Uzbekistan.
Right, the $100 billion one.
Exactly. Tashkent commits to investing over $100 billion in U.S. sectors, and that includes critical minerals processing and aviation over the next decade. So this isn't just the U.S. investing there.
No, it's tying Uzbekistan's economic future much more closely to the U.S. market. It's a two-way street, supposedly.
It's a classic economic leverage move, you could say. But, I mean, should we be thinking about the feedback loop here? If Tashkent is praising the U.S. like that and committing $100 billion?
Yeah. Is it genuine free trade, or is it more about political alignment? Reducing that historical reliance on their neighbors.
It's the core question, isn't it? And it kind of spirals out immediately beyond just Central Asia. Our sources note something else significant tied to this region.
The Abraham Accords connection.
Yes. Kazakhstan took the, well, symbolic step of becoming the first country to join the Abraham Accords since 2020.
Which is fascinating because it links that need for economic partners directly to these broader geopolitical alignments. I mean, sure, Kazakhstan has had relations with Israel since, what, the early 90s?
Yeah, long time.
But the symbolism of joining the Accords now, alongside the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, it signals, maybe, a further reduction in Israel's international isolation, especially after recent events in the region.
And they mentioned specific cooperation areas, too, didn't they? Defense, cybersecurity.
Energy, food technology, the standard areas for that kind of strategic partnership.
But the reporting goes even further. It links this expansion of the Accords directly to those very fraught discussions about Gaza's future.
Yeah, there's this one vision for rebuilding or restructuring Gaza that's apparently circulating. And it's politically charged, to say the least. The subtitle is...
From a demolished Iranian proxy to a prosperous Abrahamic ally.
I mean, that subtitle alone tells you the kind of geopolitical thinking involved. It's maximalist.
And what does it propose?
This particular vision talks about voluntary relocation for about a quarter of Gaza's population, offering them like a $5,000 package to leave.
Wow. That's starkly different from other plans, like the Phoenix Plan.
Completely different. The Phoenix Plan aims to sort of restore Gaza's existing social fabric, its geography. This other vision is, well, something else entirely.
And Raja Khalidi from the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute, he warned about this, right? Saying these proposals risk creating an opening for disaster capitalism.
Exactly.
Ah.
It really speaks to how these high-level deals like C5+1 and the Accords are fundamentally reshaping even the most difficult conflicts on the ground.
Absolutely. And that strategic link, it's actually the perfect bridge to our next segment. We're moving from mineral diplomacy to a really devastating conflict, also driven by a vital resource.
Oh.
Let's pivot to Sudan. It's currently facing what the sources are calling the world's worst humanitarian crisis, especially after the fall of al-Fasher to the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, just last month.
Yeah, the war's been ongoing since 2023. It's essentially this brutal fight for control between the Sudanese military, the SAF, and the paramilitary RSF.
And the RSF, they originated from the Janjaweed militia, right? The U.S. accuses them of genocide.
That's the accusation, yes. And the conflict itself, it's just fueled by resources, specifically competition for Sudan's gold and also its gum Arabic, both sold internationally, apparently, to buy weapons.
Okay, so this is where that disturbing duality comes in again. U.S. intelligence reports allege that the UAE, a key U.S. partner, we just talked about them with the Abraham Accords, has been sending weapons to the RSF, including Chinese drones, armed and unarmed, heavy machine guns.
Now, the UAE publicly denies this, flat out. They say they stick to UN resolutions, reject any suggestion of supporting either side. But, well, the analysis suggests this alleged backing is strategic. It's seen as maybe part of the UAE's desire to counter Islamist groups linked to the SF.
Yeah.
And maybe advancing their own, quote, imperial ambitions across the region.
Disbanding influence.
Right. And critically, the sources point out the UAE provides this essential outlet for the RSS gold sales, which funds their whole campaign.
So, okay, if the RSF allegedly has UAE support, who's backing the other side? The Sudanese Armed Forces, the SAF.
The SS is reportedly supported by Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. Egypt's interest is particularly strong, shared Nile River concerns, the strategic importance of the Red Sea shipping lanes.
So Cairo prefers a military government in Sudan.
Seems that way, a reliable strategic ally.
Yeah.
Now, Egypt also denies providing arms, but they're cited as the likely source for some of the hardware the SF is using, like fighter jets, maybe some Turkish drones. The layers of external involvement are just staggering.
Which brings us right to accountability, or the lack of it. The UK holds the penholder role for Sudan at the UN Security Council. They lead the response.
They hold the pen.
Yet, despite intelligence warnings about possible genocide in al-Fasher, the UK government apparently rejected plans for robust atrocity prevention.
And this is where that political calculation really seems to clash with the humanitarian need. We learned that officials at the FCDO, the Foreign Office, they were given 4 options for action.
Ranging from ambitious prevention to basically doing very little.
Exactly. And they chose the least ambitious option. The internal reasoning given was resource constraints and limited capacity for a more decisive role.
So instead of measures to actually prevent atrocities, they opted to allocate an extra $10 million to groups like the Red Cross, the ICRC.
Which, critics argue, is basically abdicating responsibility.
Yeah.
Shayna Lewis, a conflict expert quoted, argues choosing the least ambitious path shows a lack of priority for prevention, and that this inaction effectively makes the UK complicit in the ongoing genocide.
Because failing to act on warnings isn't just circumstance. It's a political decision.
That's the argument. It's an indictment, really, of global priorities. Focus on resource extraction, influence, while direct prevention gets sidelined because of perceived constraints.
And meanwhile, peace efforts stalled. The U.S. Quad Group, U.S., Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, they issued a peace plan, called for a humanitarian truce.
The RSF actually agreed to that truce, but the Sudanese military official basically said no deal, not unless the RSF completely withdraws from all civilian areas and gives up all its weapons.
Which is a non-starter, effectively.
Pretty much guarantees the fighting continues and gives those external backers continued influence, continued control over those resource flows.
Okay, so we've hit resource diplomacy, resource-driven conflict. Now for the third pillar in this global snapshot, direct, kinetic military engagement by the U.S.
Right.
We're turning to the Trump administration's controversial campaign. U.S. forces striking alleged drug boats, Caribbean, Eastern Pacific, since early September 2025.
Yeah, the scale and the nature of this operation are definitely generating a lot of debate. Legal, ethical debate. Since it began, the sources say at least 70 people have been killed.
70.
At least 70 killed and 18 vessels destroyed, mostly speedboats, one semi-submersible. And the U.S. has deployed significant force, 6 Navy ships, F-35s, even the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group. It's a massive projection of power.
And the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, he was pretty blunt about it, released footage of the latest strike, targeted a vessel linked to a designated terrorist organization, and issued a threat.
If you keep trafficking deadly drugs, we will kill you.
Stark. Stark is one word for it.
It immediately raises that question, though. What's the legal basis? I mean, when the military acts as judge, jury, and executioner outside any kind of judicial process, even against traffickers.
Experts start calling it extrajudicial killing.
That's the term being used. And what's maybe even more concerning is the political backdrop.
Which is?
The Senate recently blocked a Democratic attempt at a war powers resolution, which essentially leaves the president with unchecked authority to expand this campaign, which seems largely aimed at actors linked to Venezuela.
And the administration isn't stopping there.
Apparently not. The sources confirm they're actively seeking legal guidance to strike targets other than just boats, which suggests a potential escalation, doesn't it? From sea interdiction to maybe land-based operations, infrastructure.
So the U.S. is simultaneously doing stabilizing economic work in Central Asia and then using this lethal, unchecked military force in the Caribbean. It's quite a contrast.
It is. And meanwhile, tensions simmer elsewhere.
Right, the more traditional hotspots are still hot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like North Korea. Just last week, fired a suspected ballistic missile towards its eastern waters. Flew cross-country.
And this follows more testing recently. Hypersonic, cruise missiles.
Yeah, stepped-up testing. And it came right after Defense Secretary Hegseth visited South Korea.
Coincidence?
Unlikely. Kim Jong-un, he's consistently ignored any calls for talks with Washington or Seoul since way back in 2019. He's just accelerating his nuclear program.
And strengthening ties with Russia.
Deepening those ties.
Yeah.
Allegedly sending troops, military gear to support Russia's war in Ukraine. It's all interconnected, you see.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's just pull out a couple of quick, maybe surprising nuggets. Things that show how fragile some of the systems we rely on actually are, even while all this geopolitics is churning.
Yeah, the vulnerability of infrastructure. Look at India. There's this technical issue with the automatic message switching system, the AMSS at Delhi's main airport, Indira Gandhi International.
AMSS, that's like the brain for air traffic control.
So,
Flight plans, weather, all that data.
pretty much. And when that system went down, controllers had to process flight plans manually, by hand, which at one of the world's busiest airports.
Caused massive delays.
Huge delays, averaging nearly an hour for departures. It just shows, even with advanced tech, one glitch can bring major international commerce almost to a halt.
A sobering thought. And finally, something a bit later.
A moment of high-level light relief, maybe. Royal Diplomacy Edition. Prince Harry issued a public apology.
To Canada. For what?
For the apparently grave sin of wearing an L.A. Dodgers cap during the World Series.
Oh, dear. Diplomatic incident.
He quipped he was under duress, apparently. Promised to make amends by wearing a Blue Jays hat instead. Little human moment amidst all the pressure.
Nice. Okay, so let's try and synthesize the major themes from this deep dive.
Yeah, I think what really stands out is this clear, overriding focus on controlling vital resources. You see it with the critical minerals in Central Asia that's about future stability supply chains.
And then you see it with golden gum Arabic in Sudan, fueling just a devastating ongoing conflict. This competition for resources, it just directly dictates the kind of external intervention we see.
Absolutely. And the sources really highlight the massive and often, frankly, contradictory influence of these external powers.
Yeah.
Like the UAE example, a diplomatic partner in the Accords, but allegedly a destabilizer in Sudan.
At the same time. And global accountability systems, like the UK's role at the UN, they seem really vulnerable to, well, resource constraints, leading to this sort of calculated inaction on preventing genocide.
Which really raises an important question, I think, for you, for the listener to consider as you process all this. We've seen the U.S. deploying, stabilizing, resource-focused diplomacy, the handshake, if you will.
While simultaneously using lethal, expansive, and legally questionable military force, the missile in the Caribbean, how do these conflicting approaches, the handshake and the missile, how do they redefine America's role on the world stage?
Think about just how profoundly that struggle for resource control shapes global stability. And maybe what role is even left for the international community when key players seem to be funding both peace and war, sometimes in the very same regions. Something to mull over.